Everybody, we're gonna go through some more about line and shape and principle of contrast, break some of these vocabulary words down from your reading this week. We're gonna look at some artworks and I'll explain a little bit more about line and shape for you. So, there are three parts of form. So, form is any kind of object or being in our daily or living lives, right? It could be a plant on a desk, could be a bird on your windowsill, your hand, a piece of paper on a desk, anything like that. Form is a shape and a being or a being, something like that. So, a point, if we really think about this, we can think about someone who is drawing or writing on a piece of paper. The first contact that a pencil makes to paper makes a point. And points have no dimensions, no height or width. It is just the first contact. And lines are made up of connected points, right? So if you put your pencil down to paper, you make a point, you keep drawing with that pen or pencil, you're making a line, which is a point in motion, and it's capable of an infinite variety. So line is the most common design element. Contours are shapes bounded or bordered by lines. So multiple lines make up contours, which make up shapes. So here's line at its most basic level. It's describing the edges of a shape, but it's also the record of the path of points from the artist's hand in space. And this is Picasso, which we know a lot of his like famous paintings, right? But he also worked in a studio and made these photographs that are light drawings. They're very cool. If you are interested, you should look up more of them. But this is line at its most basic level, and you can see his whole drawing in time. And then here, line can create mood or have different kinds of variety and show movement. But our eye tends to follow line. So in this Cy Twombly chalkboard painting, we can kind of see where his hand started and where his hand ended if you keep looking hard enough, and you can see that there's a certain mood by how quickly he was doing those squiggles, how forcefully, how tall or short they get, and it really creates a mood of a piece when we know the movement that the artist has made. And you can use, moods as descriptors of line. You can call the lines nervous or excited. They could even be calm or graceful or dancing or even artful is a way you could describe a line. For this, I definitely think there's a lot of excitement. You can see that the squiggles were probably done like pretty quickly. And there is no calmness to this, even though there is a repetition in the line. Here's another work that you can talk about mood with for this type of line. You can see the figure on the right has a more stern mood due to the weight, thickness, boldness of the line, and then the young figure on the left kind of has this playful and innocence about the way her lines or her line is coming out of her mouth. So line describes shape and shapes describe objects. So this is what one would call a gesture drawing, which is describing the shape is less important than the dynamics or action of the poses. It's often a shorthand or an artist shorthand is just wanting to get the shapes kind of proportionate, and the gesture drawings are usually done pretty quickly just to get something down on the paper, and then you start refining line a little bit more. once you start to bring in contour lines. So I brought in this Henry Matisse drawing from your book, and I just wanted to go a little bit further. In the book they do talk about contour line, but just to reiterate, a contour line can define form through cross contour. It's following the boundaries of sections to make it seem like a more three-dimensional form. And most of the time it's on the outside of the form that they start. So you can see that in the drawing, he's drawn her actual body shape by like having these arms, but he's wanting to show like that she actually has a body under this dress. So the lines of her dress start to match or cross to create the actual form of her body. And you don't have to use just contour or gesture drawings alone. You can combine the two styles, and often that is what makes the style that an artist kind of develops on their own. And then there are three different kinds of lines that I want to talk about. And then I'll show you some examples. Actual line is the line itself, and it can have many different properties, including varying weight and character. We've kind of already gone over something like that. So I brought this Glory Be to God piece in from your book as well to show that there are so many different possibilities of line. There are so many different kinds of lines in this piece, right? And things that you should look at could be the volume. Line could be used to imply volume or three-dimensional depth. Definitely with these white lines, there's some depth that kind of draw our eye further back into the piece. And then there's also line quality. Some of those lines have repetition to where they've been drawn over and over to where you're having like a little bit more weight. And then there are lines that kind of fall back and look more like cobwebs or something like that, that are a little bit harder to see. So line quality is a characteristic that you can use to describe lines such as with words such as thin, rough, smooth, delicate, flowing. And you can go back to um, mood vocabulary too, like nervous or excited, things like that. Another kind of line I would like to talk about is implied or psychic line. So, this is something we will definitely talk a little bit more about as we go throughout the semester because a lot of art pieces have like deeper meanings, and we're looking at, a group of people and they're dressed a certain way, and we can just tell that something is going on. And that is by implied line with this painting because we can see, this person's eyes are looking at this person's eyes, and then you immediately want to see who this one's looking at, and you see that there are two more people here. So this implied or psychic line is like not an actual drawn line, right? It's something that our eye kind of carries us through this painting. Another implied line are the hands, right? This white arm is something that catches our eye due to a really bright part of the painting, and then we see her hand that's going into the pocket. And then we're checking out all of the hands now due to these implied lines that aren't drawn, but our eye just naturally is curious about what's going on in the painting once we look a little bit deeper. And then cross-hatching is something that is used to make deeper values, so light and shadow. Cross-hatching is just directional line, using directional line on top of one another to create darker darks or just like light shadows like we can see on the right hand side with the clouds here. but you use cross-hatching for shading to make the gray values. And it could also make it a more three-dimensional piece. So a lot of times artists will go in and in places they want to have some darker shaded areas, they'll go in. You can see this artist started going in, making their directional lines going from the top to the bottom, going from right to left, and then to get some of those darker shades over here, they started going with those directional lines from the left to the right. And where those lines meet is a crosshatch, which means that a darker value would be made. And you can see they did this all through, or Rembrandt made this etching using cross-hatching there. So I just wanted to go a little bit deeper with line outside of the textbook, just to make sure that we're talking about the way to describe line and what kind of vocabulary you should use when describing paintings or drawings as we go throughout the semester.